Hey there, guys. Thank you so much for watching this video. I am here with Tom Farley, and I am so excited to talk about his story, learn more about his recovery, talk about mental health, and talk a little bit about his family, too. So, for those of you who don't know, Tom Farley here is Chris Farley's brother. And if you're
Okay.
anything like me and you love comedy, you know who Chris Farley is. But Tom has such an interesting story about his own journey through addiction recovery, through mental health. And so I wanted to have a conversation with him about that. I want to give Tom a second to introduce himself. So, Tom, can you let my followers know who you are and what you do?
Sure. Yeah, Tom Farley here in Madison, Wisconsin. Um, I have been an advocate, public speaker, talking about, my brother Chris Farley for many years. But here I found myself, at this amazing place here in Madison, a startup called recovery.com. Is this amazing platform, it's a search engine, a web resources to help people find the right treatment for them, substance use or mental health, and really breaking down the lack of knowledge or the hurdles that people have to find the right treatment. That's why I'm at recovery.com for that reason. Make sure my voice finds the right people and from the right place.
Thank you so much for letting me
Oh,
come here and do
yeah.
this with you.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's been telling my story. It's been a journey. As I said, I started out telling Chris's story, and then bringing in the family, and now I get to tell my story, and all of that stuff is part of it. But I just feel like I'm at a place now where I get telling my story is not just people are interested, but also like I'm healing more than I ever have because it's me, which is awesome. So thank you for giving me this opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. And so, because that's how you got started, can you tell me about how you started telling Chris's story and how that led to your
Yeah.
own advocacy?
I mean, that's really what it all it was, and Chris, 27 years ago, actually yesterday, died. And it was, in such a public way and it was Chris. And I was like, all right, how do I process this? And I was very fortunate in that I learned right away, or I understood right away, that if I was going to heal or process this or whatever my intention was, at the very least, I had to talk about it. I knew that right away. And so I went out thinking that I want to make sense of this and use Chris's story to prevent somebody else from going down that same road, because there was, as I said, there was a lot of attention there. And so I started going out into schools, doing just that, more of a prevention thing. And I went out, and I remember the first couple of times speaking, and it was very uncomfortable. It's a heavy subject matter, and it's even heavier for me because my lived experience, was a brother dying, and I just didn't. I wanted to talk about it, but not in this way. And I immediately took a step back. I'm like, man, all three of my brothers went into acting and comedy, and I was always looked at them in their ability to connect with people, and through this gift of humor that we all have. So I just all right, I've got to use humor.
Mhm.
Even as this is a pretty heavy subject matter, I'm like, that's my language. So, I had to figure it out. And I looked at all my brothers who learned their humor through improv at Second City. And so I looked at the audience I was talking to, it was kids in school. And I looked at all the programs that were there. They all reflected the mission of the building that they were in.
Mhm.
They were schools. So people wanted to, educate, to inform. And yet, with all this information, we're still we're struggling with this. So what's the tool? And I looked at what my brothers have been doing in improv, and I studied it. I'm the smart one in the family, so yeah, that's what I do. And so, and I learned it was designed by a woman that was dealing with at-risk inner city kids in Chicago, and she developed these exercises and games to create connection and ensembles, and help people even communicate better. I'm like, that's it. that was the missing piece to me. You can educate all you want, but if they don't know how to, if people don't know how to connect and use that, like, so I went into school as just teaching improv and
Mhm.
telling Chris's story. Again, it wasn't my story, but the improv and the connection thing I've been talking about for over 20 years, and
Yeah.
like that made sense to me, and so I've been, I started there, and that just kind of, that was my journey, and now I look back, and that brought me into, like, talking about my story. But all this time, it's talking, connecting, and healing. And then I step back and I look at a lot of my other family members who didn't do that so much. You know, it's easy to talk about Chris's, comedy. That's a safe place to be, but not about his struggles, because, like with any family, there's a, defensiveness, or like, or I don't want to, if I share about it, like Chris, people are gonna think, it's us. I'm like,
Mhm.
well, yeah, it kind of is.
Yeah.
So I was willing to go there, and I see a lot of my family members still struggling with that, and I'm sad, but I can't do anything about it.
Well, and
But
it's so common, I think, especially in the Midwest, right?
oh
We
God, yeah,
have this stigma around mental health, mental illness. I faced that a lot early in my own diagnosis, but my mom also struggled with schizophrenia and addiction, and so I watched her go through it
yeah,
too. And it's gotten better recently, but like even 10 years ago, the stigma around addiction in the Midwest and or even mental health was very fault of your own. Like people almost made you feel like you were guilty for having
yeah.
these issues. And so I definitely understand that. What do you think when you talk about like stigma around mental health and mental illness and addiction? You talk a lot in your story about getting to kids and speaking and teaching improv. What do you think the importance is of reaching people at a young age about topics like this?
What I found, and it took me a long time to find that out, is that the kids today, even today, are doing what I did, when I was their age, which was trying to survive, trying to protect myself in this, what looks like a pretty dangerous world. If you look at it that way, it's also a great, there's a lot of connection out there, a lot of healing, if you get there. But, for the longest time, it really came to me that, like, what I was doing, all of these, it was putting out this person that I thought the world wanted me to be, that the expectations of for myself that I needed to be, and so I was putting that person out there, and it wasn't a real person. It wasn't an authentic person, and so when I was trying to connect to people, and finding those moments where I did have, people, like respond, laughing at my jokes or connecting with me, like, why do I still feel bad? Is because they're connecting with somebody that isn't real,
Hmm.
and that just like amazing, and not only that, but the work I had to do to put that person out there was incredibly hard, and part of that work was that if I to be that guy, I needed everyone around me to be a certain way. I needed my family to be, my kids to act a certain way. I need my employer to give me not the job I have, that job.
Hmm.
You don't understand? Like I need to be that guy,
Hmm.
so I need that job, and it just, as much as I want to connect, my need to control people, to be that person, push people away.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I started being vulnerable and wanting to show people my authentic self, I was no longer a threat to people, and people, like, started to come back to me, and like they wanted that person, that authentic person that I was so fearful of showing. And I guess that's my message to particularly, teens, young adults. It's like, I know exactly what you're doing. You're trying to protect yourself, and in doing that, putting out this person that isn't real.
Yeah. So basically, like making a shield
Yeah,
to protect
it's
yourself.
absolutely. And then, just to jump ahead, then when I got into recovery myself and started talking about things like rigorous honesty, humility, gratitude, it it hit me like, first of all, like, why is this so hard? Like, I'm a good person. Like, these shouldn't be hard things for me. And I realized that I was trying to work on those things, but the person that was doing it wasn't real.
Yeah.
How could that person who wasn't real that I was showing the world ever be grateful or ever be honest? Like, I was honest to a point that I wasn't, that I held something back to protect, to as protection, and like that's why I wasn't feeling good, because like, this isn't, I'm dipping my toe in the waters of these emotions, but I'm not.
Yeah.
And there's a thing analogy I like to tell about Chris and I. I know definitely Chris felt it, and I definitely feel it is we could be in the middle of a room or a bar, surrounded by people, center of attention, making everyone laugh, and yet not feel more like we're standing on the surface of the moon. Like, but I have from out people looking at it, like, oh, Tom Farley's got, like, look at all the people that are listening to his stories and all that kind of stuff. But I'm standing there like, they're connecting to somebody that's not real, and I want them to connect to me. I didn't know why that was, and the only way for me to manage that was to certainly to drink on one level. But so yeah, my message is like, yeah, that's why this is our inability to connect and to put out that authentic person and the vulnerability that is needed to do that. It's a scary proposition.
Yeah.
But what you get in return coming back is so much more authentic and genuine. That's what I want more than anything else in the world. You're manic about feeling that way.
Can you talk a little bit about stigma and like how people reacted to you telling your story? And also I want to know, like, was the stigma different talking about Chris's story versus your story? Like, did people react differently? Were people more or less receptive about either of your guys' stories?
That's a great question. I've never thought about that before, but when I think about it, is I've always been, because like when Chris died, there was just so much opinion, judgment, all that kind of stuff, and that was so hurtful to hear, or watch my mother hear that, and I'm like, I want to, I want to do what I can for that. So I went out talking about Chris's story. To be honest, because I wasn't really being authentic and truthful, I probably, if I'm honest, I moved the needle on stigma. I think because the way I was talking about it, somebody else, and not being honest about our family and this and that, I think that kind of is why stigma sticks around, until we start, like as I said, like, yeah, just look at the culture we have here in Wisconsin.
Oh yeah.
We laugh about, having, 80% of the drunkest counties in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And we laugh about it because it's protecting us from what we really need to talk about. And you ask every one of those people that are laughing about this drinking culture, like, do you really hate Wisconsin that much? And they're like, no, it's just the opposite. We love the state. Like,
yeah,
beautiful. We absolutely would die for the state. I go, but you're perpetuating the stigma about us, and that's harmful. I think I was doing the same thing.
Yeah, and like you said, the Wisconsin, I travel all over and get to talk to addiction advocates and recovery advocates, and they always ask me about that, because it's like well known here in Wisconsin. We have this culture of drinking, and unfortunately what they don't see is there's a lot of that leads into people also struggling with addiction from substances as well, because if you struggle with an addiction from alcoholism, usually it's people that have addictive personalities. It's not just the one thing. Yeah. And so that can lead to other addictions as well. So the last question I want to ask you, and I'm really excited, we're going to do a couple other videos about specific topics, but the last question I want to ask you about this is, when you started sharing your own story, what was the impact for you? Because the impact for other people is they get to hear you, it helps heal them. They can start to create a bridge between someone else's story and their own. But for you as an advocate, how did that help you or heal you?
Oh God, yeah, and I still experience it today. One of the things I like to joke about is like when I started this, my full name was Tom Farley, brother Chris Farley, who died of a substance overdose. That was my full name. And I kind of accepted that that's who I needed to be. That again, putting out this inauthentic person. But now, in doing all this, I suddenly realized, like, oh my God, I get to be Tom Farley again.
Yeah.
Not somebody's brother. It's just that I was putting out this kind of person to the world, and then I became somebody's brother. On top of it, I got lost.
Yeah.
And so now I tell my story, and the best thing is when every event I go to, people come up to me afterwards and they go, "That's not what I thought this was going to be about at all." Because it's there is a marketing element of putting out that Chris Farley's brother is going to speak.
And I'll tell you right now,
that's
like
fine.
when I make the YouTube thumbnail for this, that's probably
you lean into that.
But
you can do that. But like I created that brand,
Yeah,
or
of
Chris
course.
helped create that brand, and I was being that brand, and that didn't feel good. So like
it didn't feel you.
Yeah. So now I'm kind of finding out who this person is, and like, but that brand still exists, and so like, go as long as I'm not the one doing that and thinking that that's my brand too. It's not.
Well, and my whole thing about it is, a lot of the internet and social media is the initial click, right? I want people to see that, but come hear your story,
And
because that's what I think is important. And even now, like when I heard you speak at NAMI, Wisconsin, I didn't get to sit through the whole session because I was doing a session at the same time, but I saw you were coming, and I talked to people after the session, and they had such amazing things to say, and they said it was so powerful. And I was really excited to be able to have this conversation with you because addiction, mental health, it's really all connected, and I don't think we talk enough about it.
And and I noticed that up at NAMI too is if I'm just out there telling Chris's story, people are going to walk away with entertainment. Oh, I heard somebody's story. But what I'm seeing is, like, at some point in the talk, they're like, start to see themselves.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure they never like, oh, the Farleys and that whole myth, and like Chris, and like, no, we're Wisconsin. We grew up here. Like that's. Yeah, you have a lot. We share a lot of these same things, and it's okay to talk about them. And I'm using my story, my family story, or my experience as Wisconsin to like lean into that, and just it's okay to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
You're gonna feel much better, and I think that's I kind of give people permission to go that to get beyond that fear of going there,
Yeah, that's great. Is there any last message you would have for anyone who's watching or listening, and they're either dealing with their own mental health, their own addiction? A lot of my followers have either diagnosis or they're caregivers. Do you have any messages for them?
Again, I thank you. As I said, when I got into this, with this, teaching this art of improv, which is creating ensembles. And I got really kind of manic about it, like, the beauty of the ensemble, where every piece is different, and, I talk about like, if like one person, if all their participation in that piece is to just hit a chime, one note, and that's it. But they're doing that to 100% of their capability and ability. That makes that song beautiful.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Like, you're not competing against the tuba that's bigger, louder, shinier. Like you're given 100%, and everyone in that orchestra like loves you for doing that. And that's kind of that I take that concept to, especially now. It's the concept of like, it's our otherness that makes the song, that makes the orchestra what it is.
Yeah.
When you start othering people, you've ruined the piece.
Mm-hmm.
Like we need that one chime. If that's all they can do, like that's awesome. And in return, that one person who just gives it all for that one note, and it's accepted, and yeah, you have no idea what that feels like. Not just like to you, to connect with that person, but that person that so needs that connection as well. But it's just not in their nature to be that, to go out and look for it. Sometimes some people just need, like, you know what, it's too heavy a load for me to go out and find connection. But the fact is, we're all human. We're hardwired, as we like to say, for connection. So like sometimes it's us that needs to do that initial connection and that work. And as I said, what comes out there, at the end, no matter how that is, fantastic. It's beautiful. So my thing is, I don't know, learn about ensembles, like lean into it, and grow your ensemble, as weird and diverse and crazy as it is. And will you see what you get with that?
That's awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for sharing your story with us
You bet.
today. If you guys want to follow Tom or learn more about his journey, you can find him on LinkedIn or Facebook. Be sure to like this video, share, and subscribe. And be sure to check out the other video. This is why I save these for the end. And be sure to check out the other videos I did here with Tom on this page.